Hello, I received a question from section 4.1 in the homework to compute and interpret the linear correlation coefficient. And so I'm going to go ahead and go through this problem right now. It's question number 13 in the homework. Okay, so the problem says the data in the accompanying table represent the annual rates of returns for various stocks. If you only wish to invest in two stocks, which two would you select? If your goal is to have low correlation between the two investments, and which two would you select if your goal is to have one stock go up when the other goes down? So let's interpret some of this language here. So first of all, here are the stocks. And so in year, just interpreting the data we have here, annual rate of return. So in year one, stock A went up 11.6% or 0.116. Stock B went up 2.9%. Stock C went down 0.473 or 47.3%. And stock D went down 0.109 or 10.9%. So if it's negative, that means it went down. If it's positive, that means it went up. And wondering whether or not two things correlate is if they're related to each other. So if one goes up, do the other one also go up? Do they go up about the same amount? If one goes down, does another one also go down, also about the same amount? So that's the kind of stuff that correlation tells us. And a linear correlation would be like 1-to-1. They both go up by 5, or they both go down by 2, or something like that. So StatCrunch actually calculates those correlation coefficients really easily for us. And when you have more than two things that you're correlating, it makes a correlation matrix. And so we're going to go ahead and do that here. Okay, so we have the 4 stocks. We have how much they went up or down each year for 11 years. And we're going to go to summary stats, correlation. So a summary, when we're doing summary statistics, we're looking at all of the data and we're saying overall, what's going on? How well do these two things relate to each other for the correlation? And so we're selecting all of the stocks. We want to look at how they all compare with each other. So we don't do this much by hand normally, because normally you're just looking at two things. So in problem number 12, you were looking at how two things correlated, and you could draw a scatter plot to see how those two things correlated. So this is basically looking at how A correlates with B and A correlates with C. And so it does all of this. And so what it creates is a matrix. And so we're just going to hit compute. And so here we go. This is what the matrix looks like. And so what you see here is it's showing how stock A correlates with stock B, and A correlates with C, and A correlates with D. Now, if we had wanted to, we could have also actually told it to tell us how A correlates with itself. Take a guess for a second. How do you think it would correlate to itself? So hopefully you have guessed, and so we'll go ahead and click that, compute. And so what you can see here is that stock B correlates to itself. 1, it's perfectly correlated because all of them match. So I could talk a lot about a correlation matrix, and we're not going to get too deep into that here. But basically, this is a way that we can check and see how these stocks are related to each other. And so 1 means they're perfectly correlated in the positive direction. So they both go up in exactly the same way. They both go down in exactly the same way. If it's a negative 1, that means that they're perfectly correlated in the opposite direction. So if one of them goes up by 20%, the other one goes down by 20%. So they change in exactly the same way. And so if we say something is perfectly correlated, it's going to be perfectly correlated in the same direction. It'll be positive 1. And if they're in opposite directions, where one goes up and the other goes down, it's negative 1. So if I want to have low correlation, that means I don't want the correlation to be very strong. And so what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a number that's really close to 0. And so because a 0 correlation means that there is no relation between the two things, completely random noise. And so stock B and C are the closest to 0. The second closest to 0 would be stock A and D. But we want the closest to 0, so that's stock B and C. And closest to 0. So the second question is asking about one stock going up and the other stock going down. So like I said, that's inverse correlation. So one is positive and one is negative. So we're looking at the number that is closest to -1. Not closest to 1, positive or negative, but closest to -1. B and D are closest to +1, meaning as B goes up, D goes up. But here, A and C are the closest to -1, which means when A goes up, C goes down. When C goes up, A goes down. So A and C is our answer for this second one, and closest to -1. Okay, I hope this helps.